Hey, Instagram, don't mind the dogs. This is me, T, from the Pattersons, taking the train to Tibet. It's India, man. I'm in India. It was dogs in India. And do you know why? Where's my stick at? Do you know why Gandhi is always walking with a stick? Because of the dogs. Just letting you know. Okay. Talk about Gandhi and tradition. I don't know. I told you many times. I grew up in a different era, and I grew up in a different circumstance. So, for instance, I've been in the movement since I was like 14 or whatever it was, 64, something like that. And it's interesting. Back then, we were serious. When I say we were serious, we would read. If somebody had an argument there, we check that argument out. Somebody had a topic, we check that argument out. Notice I'm going left and right and left. Because no matter who you are. In fact, you wouldn't pick a lane and stay in that lane, or you stay in that lane, but you'd be checking out the other lane and see what people were saying. Let me put it this way. Look this up on YouTube. One of the best debates, whatever I ever saw, was just relax, not talking over each other. Was Huey P. Newton was on William F. Buckley's program, right? William F. Buckley had a program on PBS or whatever, whatever, and it's very popular. People were going, and Huey came on there one time. What was interesting is that, Buckley is always straight-laced, because pipe, seemed like he had a pipe, so-called conservative, you know how he talk. Huey Newton came on there. The brother was relaxed. The brother was being relaxed. You know how we go in, we sort of stretch our legs out, chill, like that. I think it comes from the black household. I know when I passed the park in our apartment, I had this one chair. I sit a certain way, just relax, like that. So that's what it was. But anyway, when they started to talk, forget debate, when they forget yelling, it started up. You said a friend of mine wanted to know. Blah, 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 blah. But the way he said it, is that I'm asking for a friend. It's almost like, see, I have a certain status, I guess, and I'm on here because you want it, blah, blah, blah. But before we get to all that, I got a friend back in the hood that says, since I'm here, let me ask you this. You don't get that these days. But here's the thing. I check out people, I just check out people. And especially when people are coming down on people, like everybody, Candace Owens, everybody knows Candace Owens. And then she started out one day, and I like evolutionary people. She's evolved. Some people are still stuck with her back with here, stuck with her with the Kanye T-shirt. They're stuck with her before she was. I don't want to say it this way. I don't want to call it before she was let's call it Orthodox Catholic. Let's put it that way. There's all kinds of things. The mamahood, the motherhood will change you, or just having a child will change you. So she's a different person now. One of the things I learned from her, I learned from her, looking at her, how is she informed? Like before, she was doing a lot of Thomas Sowell and somebody else. She read them and that changed her mind. She would, and I always say from the very beginning, I said, hey, all you gotta do is give her some other books to read. My favorite for her to read, because at the time he was speaking, it's like on her level right now, which is like Harold Cruz. Do some Harold Cruz, and eventually she'll get to Joe Horn or whoever's out there these days. Okay, that's the point. But she said something, and I hear things that mean absolutely nothing to nobody else, but for me they're significant. For instance, she says she thinks about her grandfather all the time. Basically, she's saying because he was a principled man. You don't have many principled men these days, right? That's the gist of her thing. And I was thinking back, if you want to know about me, then you have to know, in other words, she is her grandfather's granddaughter. That's what she's basically saying. Don't care who her mother is, who her father is. She is really guided by the principles and the example of her, of her grandfather. I guess he's passed. Yeah, he's passed. Her late, her late grandfather. Well, if you want to know me, you sort of had to know my grandmother. I am my grandmother's grandchild. It's as simple as that. If you want to know, you see. But the important thing is that things skip a generation. If you look at somebody's child, they're so busy rebelling against their parent that, they basically, they take on the guise of the grandparent. Let's put it that way. Plus, the grandparent is always kind. The grandparent don't have to do all that the stuff that makes the child always have to be challenged all the time. It's not there all the time. So it works out that way. I say that only to say, people often say, we're in a war, 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 we've been in a war, we're in a war. I don't think people understand what they're saying. Because if you was in a war, then you would know certain things. Like, for instance, when I joined the service, I don't know how this happened, but one of the things in basic training that they talked about, it was sexual blackmail. Now, don't be in a situation where you get compromised because it was weird because we're troops. What's that all about? I guess they give this thing really to spies and stuff like that. But Candace is going on about JFK. How it's weird that he's just a fervent, Zionist. Okay, Israelist. Same thing. And doesn't understand it. No matter what happens, she's on the side of this Israelists, And the conjecture is, she says she's going to do some research on this, is that somebody got him over a sexual battle. Now, check this out. Remember, JFK was a sex maniac, right? Now, I know it's just his uncle, but which means what was JFK's father? Old Joe, big old Joe, which would make Joe RFK's grandson. I'm just speculating. Why? Because that's what we do on the internet. We speculate. No evidence, we just speculate. And I'm just saying, perhaps those JFK genes who came from Papa Joe the bootlegger, whatever, And if you're bootlegging and you're in that kind of thing, then you also have access to a lot of women's, Does RFK have some sort of? But see, I wouldn't even. Let me put it this way. Let me go back and do something else. Forget that. Not forget that, but I know you can't. When in the jury they say strike that from. Jury didn't hear that. I know you heard it. Here's the thing. They can blackmail you in anything. What did King Leopold do? Right? He said, if they don't give me back the arms and the hands or whatever have you, or the limbs of the people, if they don't cut enough rubber for me. Leopold II or III, whatever Leopold he was, right? And what did those guys do? They said, you're going to work. The guy said, all right. She said, they would kidnap the family. They would cut off the limb of a child and throw the. I said, "You going to work for us now?" Oh, you see, things like that. That's a blackmail. You see, you don't do this, this is going to happen. Now, that's why we all love the usual suspects. Kaiser Sose. They say Kaiser Sose, when they come to get him, his family had a gun to his wife's head, and the children there. Kaiser Sose puts out the gun, shoots the wife, shoots the child, and basically he's saying like, oh, if they got to go, I'm gonna take them, I'm gonna take them, then I'm coming after all of you and your family and your generations. That's war. I'm not advocating that. I'm a medic. I heal. In the war, I was a medic. I heal. I don't do. In fact, I went out for pararescue. So even if I was going to be a warrior kind of thing, I would go out and rescuing warriors, and only have to fight my way out of whatever. So the point is this: I don't think you should really talk about anybody in a state of war, because you don't know when they're going to turn to your side, what skills they have. Candace Owens has a very good skill. She has two good skills. First of all, she can read, and she can articulate, and she can read, and she can articulate, and she can research. Who on outside do we got a researcher that's like, no, we got like academics and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we got academics being academics. They're not the popular thing. What is their research staff? We got people in Hollywood that got research staff. In writing a script, you got a research. You're a Hollywood, whatever. You can just put a whole machine to find out about, how to cut your beard proper. They'll go a whole history of cutting beards. They got research skills. We got people in research skills. But we're not popular. You got to put it all together. You got to be articulate. You got to be quick on your feet. You got to be decent looking. I'm not trying to be like that anyway. You got to be decent looking. You got to articulate. You got to have some moral fiber. I know. You got to be on code. When I say code, pick your code. If you're a Catholic, Catholics got a code. I'm not talking about the ones that go off code. There's Catholics that go. In fact, all these religions go off code. If they was following the code, they'd be a lot more effective. Let's put it that way. So pick your code, stick to your code, be principled, and stop talking bad about other people, because you don't know where they're going. You don't know when they're going to all of a sudden become your ally, or become a situation, or come to a situation where you can use their references, or use their research for your own ends. You see what I'm saying? So, this has been a excuse me. Let me sip some. I better not do that. Then you see what I'm sipping. Then you say, "Oh, you were there for a business." See that? That's what I'm saying. And what you see, people make random guesses or random associations by just saying something. Like, did I tell you this time? Nkrumah and them like that. I saw an old film one time, and they all sitting around drinking Coca-Cola. Now you gonna say something against Nkrumah because he's drinking Coca-Cola? You see what I'm saying? It's the times. What can I tell you? Anyway, the point is, be on code. This has been a Saturday, me ranting. Every night I rant. This one is a Saturday which ever come to my head. This one came to my head. It's this thing about like, what's your lineage? Who are you really? I mean, and then you pick out certain things. Like, one of my favorites of all time is Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory says something I think we all need to. He says it's about transparency, right? It doesn't sound like, well, it is about transparency. You know what he said? He said, tell it all. Don't be keeping no secrets. Dorothy Kilgallen, talk about JFK assassination. Dorothy Kilgallen, I'm going to write a book about everything. And she didn't tell anything. They came and unalived her and took all the stuff. So we don't even know what Dorothy Kilgallen had to say. Look it up. She's don't worry. She's a journalist, a real journalist. Back in the day, real journalist, So the thing is, whatever you're working on, tell it all. You could be episodic about it, or you could just be a group of, tell it all. Don't be holding back, say, tomorrow I'm going to tell you, but no, tell it all. Tomorrow may never come. So that's what I do. I tell it all. Whatever, you don't have to, hey look, if this was that kind of war and they caught me and they said, well, we're going to torture you. I said, oh, no, excuse me. You don't have to torture me at all. Just give me some dark chocolate. I will tell you everything you want to know. Anything I know, you know, because I'm a transparent kind of guy. Be transparent. Check you all later.